roughly $250 million.
Well, it's still quite a respectable sum of money, right?
Well, between you and me, we could have a great time in Stockholm on the weekend with that, but, but in terms of $250 million, it does pay to also look at other projects, and I don't mean to be critical, but what we have on our side is absolutely top drawer infrastructure. So we have hosted site visits to our property about 5 times. And we had very big site visits in 2006, 2007, and 2008. And one of the things that our shareholders or any analysts say when they come to the property is that, you can read about good infrastructure, you can see pictures of good infrastructure, but when you're actually on site and you realize that you left the town of Blue River, drove in a 4x4, 10 minutes up the highway, turned right, within 50 meters, you went across a bridge across the North Thompson River. Within another 100 meters, you crossed the main national rail line. Within another 200 meters, you've gone under the BC hydroelectric towers that go back to the Revelstoke Dam. You take a left-hand turn, you go up the side of the mountain for about 15 minutes, and there you are. You're at the upper Firth. So if you retrace your steps, within a half an hour, you're back in Blue River, sitting in your cabin or in a restaurant having a sandwich. It was like, oh, that took me a half an hour. I went down the highway. I went over the major fresh water source. I went over the National Railway. I went under the BC hydroelectric towers. Like, so much of it is already there. So that lowers the overall CapEx significantly.
Big time. I'd say lower it big time also. I've read about so many cases and so many, exploration companies looking in the midst of nowhere, basically, where they have, 70, 80, 90 kilometers to nearest little village. Even no water, no electricity, nothing.
Exactly.
So whatever happens during exploration, it's going to have to be very, very good to make it profitable once they get that far, if they do. Most don't, of course, but the ones who do, they better have a good economics. Now, talking about that, the pre-feasibility, the scope study, that's not too far away from now, is it?
No. In our news release of last Wednesday on June 30th, we announced that the preliminary economic assessment, or colloquially, the scoping study, will be out in fourth quarter of 2010, and which is great. It's absolutely great, and we're very happy to have that out. The company that is doing it for us is AMEC. AMEC has a sterling reputation in the mining industry. AMEC is seen as an international mining engineering firm of the highest order. So we're very happy to have AMEC working with us.
And they're working with us right now as we speak, right? This work has already started.
Oh, they've been working with us, really, Glenn, for probably over a year now.
Yeah.
And so our introduction of AMEC may be a little bit late, and that's the only thing that I would say, we would be guilty of, introducing AMEC late. But I will tell you that the first job that AMEC does as the independent third-party service provider, as is mandated by the 43-101 legislation in Canada, the independent third party comes in and they look at all of your data. And their first real job is to basically try to kill the project. They come in and they try to say, this is the fatal flaw in the project. So part of it, which could be, of course, very, very embarrassing, is that you say, hey, this is 2009, and AMEC have signed on to do our pre-feasibility study or our preliminary economic assessment. And then 2 months down the road, you have to admit that they've found some fatal flaw. So companies, if they're wise, they don't necessarily introduce that service provider at the outset. So that's why there was a lag in our introducing AMEC. But, of course, then you are very clearly meant to understand that AMEC have accepted our data. So all of the geological work, all of the drilling work, all of the data we produced over the previous 9 years, AMEC has accepted. And so that is a very, very happy day for us. So saying that AMEC, a very top firm, is working on the project is great. Saying that AMEC have accepted all of our data is fantastic. And then saying that the actual scoping study will be out in, say, 3 or 4 months, that's brilliant. So we're extremely excited to have AMEC working on it. We're extremely happy to be so close to having the scoping study out.
Yeah. And also, after the scoping study, so the sort of overall plan now, that's to be actually in production about a year after that, right? Am I right? Or?
No. Well, I mean, now you're getting into a range of where we would have to be making comments that would be making assumptions.
Okay.
A couple of levels. So what I'm going to say, and this would also carry with it some assumptions, but I would say the fall of 2012. So 2 years following the release of the preliminary economic assessment. Now, in terms of that, it only pays me a benefit to be conservative on that. Because one of the most difficult things in this industry, even if you're doing all of the appropriate things, even if you're working with the best regarded professionals, the most difficult thing is actually being accurate on timelines. And I know everyone thinks this is crazy. You know, like, well, why can't you make a better estimate of the time? Well, it's a huge job. It's like writing a doctoral thesis on a science project. And it's like, oh, okay, the doctoral thesis takes you down this road, then it takes you down this road, and maybe some roads don't lead anywhere. Maybe some other roads lead to a significant benefit. All of these things. But the time frame is a very difficult thing to be accurate on. But that's all it is. It doesn't mean that there was anything that was found to be negative or something, which is also the other side where the market always makes its own assumptions. Oh, the time frame is longer. Oh, so that must mean there's something wrong. No, absolutely not. I mean, I can say to my wife, I'm going to go to the store and I'll be back in 15 minutes. And when I'm at the store, I meet a friend I haven't seen in 10 years. And I talk to him for 5 minutes and I come back after a half an hour. My wife goes, what was going on, you know? So it's a very human thing to be, for it to be difficult to be accurate on these timelines. But in terms of us being in production, I would like to think I'm conservative in saying that we should be in production by the fall of 2012. And part of that is that the preliminary economic assessment will speak to where we're going to put the tailings and the waste management. Now, in terms of the environmental baseline data collection to get the environmental impact certificate, we have already, over a significant footprint for the Upper Fir, collected 4 years of data. Now, if the tailings and the waste management site are in that area, then we might be in production sooner. If it's in a slightly different area, then we may have to collect environmental data for, say, another 12 months. So that would be part of my estimation of when we could be in production.
Yeah. But all the environmental permits and so forth, you have those by now, right?
Well, the way it works in Canada is that you have the permits to do a specific job. So, you know, we have been fully permitted on everything we have done so far. We're fully permitted to have taken a 10,000-ton bulk sample in 2008. We only took a 2,000-ton bulk sample. We are fully permitted to do all of the exploration work we want, and we're fully permitted to do all of the drilling that we want on the Upper Fir. Now, in terms of opening a mine, what you then need is an environmental impact certificate. But you don't get that certificate until you apply for it. But you don't apply for it until you have actually designated and defined exactly where the mine is going to be. So you define where you're going to start mining, and secondly, you define where the tailings and the waste rock are going to go. So that is part and parcel of what also is going to be disclosed in the preliminary economic assessment. So we have collected the requisite environmental data for the opening of the mine for 4 years. So you should very clearly, and your subscribers should understand, that we took the rather bold move of starting to collect this data very early. Like another potentially comparable and successful mineral exploration company wouldn't have started that data collection until they had released their preliminary economic assessment. So typically what a company would do was do a